Thank you, Spencer. Hello and welcome to the Bridge webinar series. I am Rohit Mehta, a doctoral candidate in the Education Psychology and Education Technology program at Michigan State University. And it is my distinct pleasure to be hosting today's episode, which is our 21st episode of the webinar series. The Bridge, if you don't know, is a production of the Masters in Educational Technology program at Michigan State University. Through this program, we aim to provide high-quality, free professional development for educators on issues of pressing importance in educational technology. If you're joining us for the first time, you can always follow the live stream at bridge.educ.msu.edu. There, you will also find an open Titan pad where you can contribute to the conversation. You can also choose to tweet at us during the live stream using hashtag MAET That's hashtag MAET Bridge. I should also note that my co-hosts Spencer Greenhall and Sarah Keenan will be here to support us and help us navigate and connect with the online conversation and monitor Twitter chat. Okay, so that was all the spiel that we do in the introduction. So let's get started. The topic for today is today's episode actually stems from a series of conversations that we had at different occasions here at the MAET program, at the Educational Psychology, Education Technology program, and even in our one-on-one conversations previously with our guests today. One question that rose from these conversations was that, what does it take to design and organize a successful teacher professional development program in K-12 and university settings? Of course, a lot of questions arise from this one question, and this is why we are gathered here to continue our conversation in a way that can be beneficial to our viewers and fellow teachers and educators. So to engage in this conversation, we have a superstar cast joining us today. Our first guest is Dr. Melissa McDaniels. She is Assistant Dean of Graduate School and Director of the Teaching Assistant Program at Michigan State University. Since 2013, she has been working to support graduate students and postdocs at Michigan State as they develop their capacities as post-secondary instructors and mentors. She has promoted graduate students and postdocs instructional leadership through the development of a dynamic professional network called Insight Teaching. You can follow them on Twitter at Insight Teaching. By promoting student completion of the certification in college teaching at MSU, and also by running a series of Train the Trainer workshops for graduate students who facilitate international teaching assistant programs and research mentor training initiatives. In addition to Melissa's campus-based activities, she is a master facilitator and synchronous online training specialist with the National Research Mentoring Network, and she has published about this work in the Sloan Consortium's Journal Online. From 2008 to 2012, she served as director of Michigan State University's NSF Advanced Grant in the Office of the Provost, where she spearheaded the institution's efforts to diversify the faculty in STEM fields. And in this role, she was responsible for the development and implementation of MSU's new faculty mentoring policy. Prior to working at MSU, Melissa held a full-time position at Northeastern University and National Geographic Society. She has over 20 years of experience in graduate student and faculty development, undergraduate and graduate teaching, and learning organizational change. Melissa has had the pleasure of doing research and consulting domestically and internationally on topics related to programmatic learning assessment in higher education, graduate student research capacity development, and graduate student teaching development. You can follow Melissa on Twitter at McDanielsPhD. Thank you for joining us, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
And our next guest is our very own Ashley O'Connor. Ashley is an instructional technology and data coach for Alpena, Montmorency, Alcona Educational Service District, and Alcona Community Schools. Her professional practice places an emphasis on implementing data warehousing software, training professionals on assessment systems, analyzing district data, and incorporating instructional technology curriculum in both classrooms and professional development opportunities. Prior to being an instructional technology and data coach, Ashley was a secondary social studies and physical educator at Alcona Community Schools for 8 years. Ashley also holds certifications such as Google Education Trainer and Edmodo Certified Trainer. She is passionate about ways that technology can enhance learning and improve efficiency both in classrooms and in professional settings. You can follow Ashley on Twitter at O'Connor Ashley, Ashley ASHLIE. Thank you for joining us, Ashley.
Thank you.
Finally, we have here with us one and only Amber White. She is the Language Arts Curriculum Coordinator and Literacy Coach at Ruth Fox Elementary School in North Branch, Michigan. Much of her work with students, teachers, and parents has been informed by her involvement with the Saginaw Bay Writing Project, the Michigan Reading Association, and a collaborative learning partnership with Michigan State University. She is a contributing co-author to Using Technology to Enhance Writing, Innovative Approaches to Literacy Instruction. Recently authored a piece on digital think-alouds for the reading teacher and blogs about technology in literacy education for International Literacy Association. Her energy and time is spent exploring the thoughtful use of digital literacies, reading, writing, and modeling discipline literacy strategies to assist teachers in balancing student choice and interest in an era of assessment and high curricular demands. You can reach her on Twitter at awhite100. That's awhite100. Thank you for joining us, Amber.
Thank you, Rohit, Sarah, and Spencer for having me.
And thank you for letting our viewers peek into your amazing world of education research and practice. We have a lot of questions for all of you, so I should probably stop talking now and steer the conversation quickly to you guys. So let us start with a more general question, starting with Melissa. Melissa, speaking of designing and organizing and maintaining a good professional development opportunity for teachers, in your experience, what are the steps that lead up to providing a rewarding experience for teachers?
Rohit, thank you. And first of all, thank you for having me this evening, and it's great to meet everyone here. I will give a sort of a general answer, and you can tell me if you want me to be more specific. I always think about professional development from an organizational perspective. That means, how do we get the organization, and in my case, a university, really ready to support the students and teachers that are there? And so to start off, when I think about, how would we support, for example, teaching assistants at our institution, you first have to ask yourself, who are your students and what's the nature or mission of your institution? So again, the teaching and learning needs of your students, and therefore the instructional leadership skills of your faculty will really depend upon your answer to that question. Are you working at a liberal arts institution? Are you working at a trade-based institution? So again, the disciplinary content of the work that's done at your institution will impact this. But really, I really focus on who are my stakeholders and what are the unique perspectives they can bring to a professional development curriculum. So I'll be more specific here. So number one, I happen to lead the teaching assistant program at Michigan State at a central level. However, there's a lot of other very talented people on campus who have some unique perspectives on what TAs need to do a good job with our students. Those might include, for example, department chairs or the faculty of record who are actually supervising the TAs and departments. They know the discipline. They know these students. So again, getting input from them is crucial in making a successful program. Also, other student support units. We have a very big student success program here. What do they know about the broader issues that undergraduate students are experiencing here, and how can our TAs learn about those things? Institutional policymakers, there are some very important policies around FERPA, about disability access, all these different topics that, again, these partners want our TAs to know these things. And again, the list can sort of go on. So I always try to say who needs to be involved in the conversation and what are the stakeholders most well positioned to address. It is a big piece. In addition to stakeholders, I always try to think about just in time or over time. At what points in time do these different topics need to be addressed over the course of, for example, an academic year? Does everyone need to get a whole bunch of things in a fire hose of information in August, or can it be planned throughout the year? And again, that depends upon what we know about our students and instructors. And finally, where are your instructors and when are they available? This is a big one and a really tough one, I would assume in large school districts, but at a university this size. How can they participate in any type of centralized programming? The times, is it in person, is it online? So there's all these logistical questions that are very important to think about, I think, when planning something like this.
Wow, that is a great detail of information that we just learned about the kind of work that you're doing. And clearly there are a lot of factors in play here. But I'd like to know more from Amber and Ashley. So if I could steer this question to Amber first, and I wonder how similar or different has this been in your experience?
So Melissa, a lot of what she said would hold true from the school lens as well. She mentioned just-in-time professional development and the importance of looking at who we're giving PD to and what their needs are and being very unique to that. And so I would completely agree, and I think those things hold true looking from the school perspective as well. And I would also add in, I think about some of the other important features such as from the school lens, we take a collaborative approach. Coming in with the professional development is essential. I think when you're building or trying to create community and learn and grow learners in your district, it's critical not to have this coming in cold, that the people understand the needs of the learning community. And I'm sure as we converse further, how does that happen? Well, tailoring through surveys, differentiation, making sure it's continuous, not drive-through, it's sustained, and driven by the needs of your demographics in your building. But also, I think there's a reality in schools. There's this thing called a school improvement plan. And honestly, I think the school improvement plan gets a bad rap, but if done correctly, I think in our building, I can attest to that, and I think my colleagues would as well. I think that it's critical that it's not just done like in a drive-through situation, and these reflective components. So I would just kind of piggyback and agree that just in time and knowing the needs of the district are critical.
Okay, so I couldn't help but make some connections between what you said and what Melissa said about meeting the people where they are. And I wonder what Ashley's thoughts are on this. So Ashley, if I could steer this conversation to you, in your experience, what steps lead up to providing a rewarding experience for teachers?
A couple of things, and working directly with several districts as well as a building level, a systems level, and even an administrative level. As the first three things that come to my mind is immediate need, support, and practical application. Because especially in I guess, how do you say this? I guess in schools and in buildings, if it doesn't immediately apply to that teacher, or it's not practically applicable, and they cannot find a connection on what you're trying to provide them, or they don't feel you're going to have support, much like the drive-through aspect that we were talking before, is how can you sustain something and make sure it continues going forward. So I always take those three things and say, okay, how's this going to, one, change curriculum or change any kind of instruction, practice, engagement, anything like that, and two, how immediately, what reward are the teachers going to see in order for it to believe in this change in this professional development.
Okay, so if I can follow up on that, as an instructional technology coach, what are some factors that you consider when creating a professional development experience for adult learners?
Modeling. Lots of modeling, especially I like to take bigger concepts, like for instance our ESD and our buildings are fully immersed in the MTSS system, and how the multi-tiered systems of support with attendance, behavior, engagement, instruction, curriculum, how can those big ideas that they face not only in instructional technology but in English and math, in behavior, how can I take some instructional technology practices and the professional development they're getting to have them take it back to their classroom and transfer it to the students.
Okay, so building off of what Ashley and Ashley said, Amber, your school building has been involved in a collaborative learning partnership with Dr. Douglas Hartman and several doctoral students at Michigan State for past 6 years now. Could you share a few highlights about the professional development collaboration and how it has helped grow teacher understanding and practices of new literacies in your building?
First of all, I've got to give a huge shout out to Dr. Douglas Hartman, Dr. Paul Morsink, Dr. Michelle Shira-Hagerman, Rohit, Spencer, Sway, Shannon. There's a ton of people who have been intimately involved in this collaboration over the 6 years, and the key word that you said is collaboration. Just a little bit of background real quick. We are not in the backyard of MSU, so a lot of people watching this might think, oh, it's convenient, we're right by MSU. This is the leveraging and beauty of technology, planning, working together, is that actually we're more than an hour and 45 minutes away. We're rural. I'm located in North Branch, Michigan, about an hour east of Flint. So in the Thumb area, we're a Title I building-wide school. And it was a serendipitous beginning, but the short of it is this, is that for the last 6 years, we have been working very closely with Doug Hartman and doctoral students, and it's been extremely symbiotic. It hasn't just been a one-way street. It has not been a consultant thing. It has been a collaboration. It's the thing that I think has made this unique, or why we've been able to make such progress. It's not just about the tool. Mm-hmm. It's about the thinking these tools can engender. All about the TPAC. We've done a lot with the work with the technological, pedagogical, content knowledge, and really had some really concrete discussions about how can it improve what's being taught, but also being smart about what the affordance is, what the constraints are, and our refusal to champion just one piece, finding the right tool for the job to showcase student learning. And to be frankly honest, in the infancy of this collaboration, I don't think we would be able to speak that eloquently about TPAC. Mm-hmm. I think through our work and over time, our work with MSU cadres nudged us to think about what pieces of our curriculum could be improved by technology and mm-hmm. what aspects of student learning could be enhanced by the use of digital tools. And so this has come about through all sorts of ways, but I would say the key thing in professional development that is missing is differentiation. Mm-hmm. And we've totally have come about this through the behind-scenes planning. I think, unfortunately, a lot of schools get this one day, somebody comes in, they're very wise and has some really wonderful things to share, but they don't know the demographics, like Melissa and both Ashley talked about earlier. And they also, they're just coming in cold. They don't know the community. They don't know what the needs are of the building. And so the behind-scenes planning that I've been able to do with Doug, Paul, Michelle, yourself, Spencer, Sway, Shannon, everybody, there's been a lot of hours behind the scenes unfolding to make it so rich and meaningful. Mm-hmm. Also, the time that's been taken to differentiate through surveys, getting input from the stakeholders, as Melissa mentioned, is critical. Mm-hmm. And I think what's unique and about this collaboration is at the onset, at one point, we've done a lot of one-to-one projects. Teachers have been able to pursue things they're passionate about through the lens of their content, and I can't think of richer professional development than that. But like I said, it's been a two-way street. It's not just been, I'd like to think that in return, we've also been able to, work towards dissertation things that have been great interest to us, but also to the doctoral students. So our practices have been positively shaped over the years and over time. We didn't just, honestly, I could look at the beginning where some people were, just sending email attachments and not very comfortable using tools. Mm-hmm. As I look over time in the progressions of learning, and actually Doug, Paul, Michelle actually wrote a journal article and studied some of our progressions of learning. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's in the University of Boston Journal of Education. I can send that link through in a moment. But it's been quite a journey, and we're nowhere at the end, and we're continuing to learn and grow as new things unfold. But it's never been about the tool. It's been about the thinking, the dialogue, the networking, and truly making us comfortable. So when we're standing in kids 7 hours a day, we feel comfortable and confident, what it is we're actually applying, what it is we care about and learn, thanks to the tailoring and customization of the professional development. Mm-hmm.
You make some really interesting points there, Amber. You talk about tool and technology, and I want to come back to that in a minute. But I want to follow up on something you said about collaboration and making the educators and teachers feel comfortable. And I want to know from Ashley, from in her experience, what are the types of professional development that you have seen your educators benefit the most from?
I would think that the underlying in any type of professional development, we've offered virtual, we've offered flipped, we've offered an online instructor where I was part of the blended learning program here, and then we've also offered a 6-hour-a-day training. I think in all of that, what reinforces and is good is the support part of it. Often teachers, like I said, if you fly somebody in, as we mentioned before, and they have all these great things to say, and then you have to do a quick survey about them, and they have an email address that you're probably never going to use again because they're not the one that's leading the charge in your districts, and they fly, they go back to their company, the teachers feel that they don't have anyone to learn something new. And currently, right now, this instructional technology position is brand new to my area in Northeast Michigan. Also, we just picked up a new data warehousing system that we're working with, and also we picked up a new universal screener for our students. So all of these changes are happening so fast, and the biggest thing that our teachers need and feel they need is some support and verification that, one, they're taking all these programs and these initiatives and following through the right way, not the right way, but the best way for their students to learn. And in any development that I try and make that personal connection real quick. And say, hey, we're here to support you. We're here for you. And if you ever feel like you need any more support, both digitally or physically, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to help.
So, thank you for the response, Ashley. Because you also made a point about the role of technology in this equation, and Amber also made a good point about how important it is to make sure that the tool and technology is being used the right way. And I want to highlight the role of technology in our conversation. So my next question is to Melissa. Melissa, where do you see technology appear in this conversation? Have you always integrated technology into your instructional development efforts?
Yeah, I'll answer both of those questions. One thing I wanted to say and put an assumption that I make out there, when people talk about technology, we often now obviously automatically think about digital technologies, but obviously over the course of time, new inventions and tools have either participated in to facilitate teaching and learning or made teaching more challenging. A resource that I wanted to mention to folks is Hamlet's Blackberry. Has anyone ever heard of that book? It is a wonderful book. You could read it over the weekend, written by a New York Times reporter who gives a wonderful historical perspective about the impact of the introduction of new technologies back to the printing press and the impact that had on how we think about information sharing. So I just wanted to recommend that. And so, the question of where do I see it is appearing in the conversation about instructional development. Obviously, it's a vehicle for student learning. It helps students acquire information. It's a vehicle for students to demonstrate their mastery of information. It's a vehicle for students to connect with broader learning communities. So again, the question I always ask is, how can instructors facilitate all these things as happening? Obviously, it's also, and I think this is one of the most powerful things, technology is also a vehicle for community building. Okay, community building amongst instructors and their students, but amongst instructors in particular, because my view is, the instructors have wonderful models that they can share with their peers. So again, I see it as having a role in its role of community building, but obviously it's also technology. It's an object of instruction, so some people literally need practice and exposure to different technologies. As well as a channel of instruction. So I think both being a channel as well as an object of instruction are things that I've tried to deal with. So you asked, have I always integrated it into my instructional development efforts? Absolutely. I think, again, to me, I've actually had the most fun using it to sort of make content area relevant. For example, I had a graduate student who created a Powtoon video, which is a sort of a cartoon video, talking about some important policies at Michigan State. She created that video, and we used that as a launching point for in-person conversation about some really complex issues related to teaching integrity, actually. And so, but again, you know, I also teach students and feel like I need to teach students or give them the opportunity to play with technology that's available to them from Michigan State, for example. But what's new about this era is students are already bringing in so much experience with technology, and no longer is technology sort of owned by the institution. There's so many other social networking and general platforms out there that actually the students can really teach the instructors how these could be useful in the classroom. So I think I've definitely started to integrate recently some sort of talking with instructors about how could they use social media in their classroom. How could they use synchronous online discussions? But the key thing is TPAC. I constantly tell our instructors they cannot separate pedagogical approach, their content approach, and their use of tools. It all needs to be for learning. That's it. A sexy technology tool, I just don't teach people about the tools. It's about how can these different tools enhance learning and under what conditions and for whom.
Thank you for putting it together in a way that is both magical and informative, because it ties to all the things that Amber and Ashley have also been talking about. So I want to forward this to Amber now, because Amber, you said something earlier about the role of technology in your building and district. So in what ways is your building leveraging technology to enhance professional development for teachers, kind of building off of what Melissa said?
Well, I guess I'm going to look at it from 3 different angles. I'm going to look at it from video, mobile PD, and just this idea of creating opportunities for people to share, network, lead, and discuss. So in terms of video has just like opened up this crazy, mad, look what we're doing right now. I mean, thanks to Rohit, I've actually learned to harness the Hangouts on Air ourselves here at Ruth Fox. We've been on this doing virtual PD with, so one of our school needs is we want critical thinking, kids talking, and there's a lot of research showing Socratic seminars is like the way to go. And the interesting thing is I want the best person for the job. We're like, we want to learn from the best. And Matt Copeland, if you do a little research, shout out Matt if you're watching, I encourage him to take a peek. He's fantastic, and we're like, okay, we cannot afford Matt Copeland. He lives in Kansas. We are in Michigan. We are strapped. Yikes, what can we do? I sent him an initiative, wrote up a proposal. Hey, would you consider teaching us virtually Hangouts on Air for a series, not just a drive-through? First, it was a 1-year series. We're now in year 2, but a series of workshops via Hangout on Air. And the cool thing is I think we're pushing the boundaries of what Hangouts on Air should be. It is not sit and get. It is totally interactive. I might be serving as his go-go gadget arms or feet, like Inspector Gadget, but basically it is interactive, and we are doing things, and we are learning from the biggest, brightest mind in the nation with Socratic circles. And the cool thing is we then have this whole archive of where we can go back and reference. There's all these things we could talk about, the affordances and also constraints possibly, but I would argue there's many affordances, not only making it more affordable, but just the learning and the engagement. It was as good as if he was there. So video is one, and I just want to spring off of the video as well as that. So because we were video and playing with video, I started videotaping. My colleagues and I are videotaping themselves. I actually videotaped somebody doing a Socratic seminar today. So we tend to take a more interdisciplinary approach with our professional development. You could do a Socratic circle in woodshop, in gym, in math, in science. So today I was it happened to be an ELA room, and I'll be in a math room next week. But so we videotape, we share these through a digital platform with Matt. Now Matt is annotating and giving feedback of live video of our teachers doing Socratic seminar. Now, it doesn't get better than that. Just amazing. It's amazing what technology can do. And I just want to give a shout out to some other brilliant minds at MSU. John Wargo and Cassie Brownell. They're doing an initiative with Sonic Literacy right now, the Hear My Home project, which, by the way, we will be getting our kids posted tomorrow morning. That's also a form of mobile PD for teachers. I'm looking at these innovative projects being put out by minds like John and Cassie, and I want my kids engaged in that. I'm learning along with them through these mobile Twitter projects, or whether you do it on SoundCloud. And the third piece I spoke about is just this idea of leveraging technology in a sense with your own colleagues. There's some brilliance happening in the trenches. Whether I'm an instructional coach, a discipline literacy coach, but I'm by no means an expert. I have so much to learn from my colleagues. They're doing some amazing things. And I think part of my job is giving them an opportunity to showcase this. We've done things where we've done kind of a whole digital learning day where people are sharing their expertise, projects, their challenges, their successes, where we rub it up against what we're learning together and having collegial dialogue about it. So I could talk a lot on this, but those are just three things that really strike me as way that you can leverage technology and tools either around you, mobile or video, to really make an impactful learning, in the trenches, whether you're at the university or here in a public school setting.
Thank you, Amber. This makes me want to go back to Ashley and see what her experience tells her. Ashley, you have been working as an instructional technology coach for a while now, and I wonder what has been your experience dealing with integration of technology at your school level?
The integration of technology at my school is fairly new. We live in a county where there's one school. There's 750 kids.
Wow.
And there is in the whole district, and I would argue that only 65 to 70% of our students can even access internet at home, not via a cell phone network. And obviously with gigabyte limitations, we've had to challenge a little bit of how technology can enhance learning and reinforce learning 24/7 to make learning available 24/7. So we have to we're talking about putting Wi-Fi on buses. We have extended our hours of our school to have, we completely took down our library and made it into a media center learning cafe where there's charging stations, there's full speed Wi-Fi, there's a coffee shop in there. So the kids can have a place to come and learn and extend their studies. Often right now we have some students who have an hour and 30-minute bus rides. And so our school district is 30 miles by 30 miles. So they've got 900 square miles to cover with not a lot of population. It's around 10,000 total in the whole county. So our challenges more have been making our district or making our buildings the best available Wi-Fi that has to offer for this community. And we have completely made our Wi-Fi open and streamable, not only in our districts, but in our football field, in our softball and baseball field. We make maple syrup at our school, and we have a maple syrup sugar shack. And so we even have Wi-Fi located out back there because we want our building, our district is the heart of the community, and we really want this to be a community place. So we've worked on working on one-to-ones. We've worked on bring your own technology because we couldn't afford getting one-to-one in the last couple of years. So I've had to come up with BYOT policies and how to appropriately use smartphones and your own devices in classrooms. And what if you only have 5 devices? How can you put that in a classroom of 35? And so we've had to really take the baby steps of what exactly can this tool do for us with minimal availability.
So this is great, and it's a great segue into the next question that I had for you guys. And let's continue with Ashley here. How has this integration changed over time? As we're talking about changes in technology, what are you not doing that you wish you were doing?
I wish that I think we're entering into the video training world. For example, when you guys were talking about Google Hangouts and how much they've changed, we had a student who had some surgery. And so we had trained some of our teachers to teach class via Google Hangout on air. And so she sometimes would hop on live and watch the class if she was awake from her, from her recovery, or Sometimes she would just watch the recording and bring back communication. I think a lot of what we need to kind of do is integrate into that flip style. But the challenge that we present are bandwidth, speed, and things like that. So I would love to go the direction of how to make learning accessible all the time. For example, we only have 2 gyms. We have 4 basketball teams. So sometimes you have students who are there till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night practicing. What can we do to help them get back on board? So I think that a part of the professional development piece is teaching students or teaching teachers or helping teachers make learning more accessible all the time and anytime.
Right, so this idea of adaptability and flexibility. I want to ask the same question to Melissa. Melissa, how, in your opinion, how has this integration changed over time, and what are you not doing that you wish you were doing? Oh, Melissa, I think your mic is mute.
Apologies for that. So let me address the issue of what I wish I could be doing or doing better first. So this notion of scale, you know, in many of our contexts, how do you not just reach 30 people, 40 people at a time, but how can you really make resources and just-in-time development, as well as more strategic development, available to people? Again, the old model, I would say, in instructional development at universities was do a workshop, have 40 people come, have 50 people come. There are 1,200 teaching assistants working every semester at Michigan State. So again, you know, how can you scale up a lot of activities? And so I think over time, you've seen a real, I think, demand for it. I don't think anyone has a solution to this yet. I think the integration has changed over time also. I think there's so many wonderful models and best practices that I would actually argue are sort of popping up in different places, which is great. But I think this next thing is, how can you maybe adopt and really think critically, what are some of these best tools that can help everyone? I mean, one of the things, if you think about faculty, there is inconsistent support in academic departments for technology tools and professional development. Okay, and so this notion of how can we somehow sort of even out that support and disseminate some of these best practices now that they've been popping up. So the integration is, we have had most recently, okay, let's have a workshop on this innovation or that innovation. You could have a list thousands of pages long. So I think this notion of really stepping back and saying, what can we do that's scalable is something that a direction that I hope we're going to. And again, I don't know if this is getting too off topic, but what am I not doing? I actually wish design could play a really, really key role in making the products that we have more attractive. And honestly, I'm not a designer. I don't have that talent. And so how can we as institutions support our faculty in providing some of these wonderful templates and models for making this stuff look good, right? And having some consistent branding. And that's something that's very hard because faculty aren't necessarily design experts. So that's another piece.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And what you said about design, I wish I had a better follow-up for that. But I want to ask the same question to Amber. Amber, how has this integration changed over time in your experience, and what are you not doing that you wish you were doing?
Well, I just got to echo something Melissa hit the nail on the head in my opinion. This idea of scalability is huge, and I would argue that is a challenge in the school system. And so one thing I would obviously wish I could change if I was in control of the Edu universe, I would, this idea of cross-pollination of ideas, K-12, and having more time to champion these ideas in a K through 12 setting. Representation is important. And this kind of brings me back to some of the work that I'm doing with MSU is Dr. Paul Morsink is actually involved in a district-wide ELA committee where we have a representation from a K person, a first grade person, a second grade person, all the way through 12th grade. We'll be meeting on a full day Saturday, no pay. Shout out to my colleagues, they're amazing, and to Paul as well. But this idea of the reason why we're thinking this way is that you cannot be an island by yourself, and it doesn't matter how great this building is or next door. We're in this together. We're in this world together. We're trying to grow democratic citizens for the society, and so we have to work. It's that C word again, collaboration. And so we're really trying to champion and figure out ways to kind of cheat that. We don't have time. And somehow, I don't think this happened overnight, but I think, our MSU cadre has earned the respect of colleagues, not only in our building, but they are aware that this commitment and over time and just the extra things you do, like Rohit and Spencer are going to come listen to Space Camp interviews, or these things that seem little, but it shows that they care about our community and the demographics. We are making a difference. These teachers are willing to give time where we're meeting with each person, and then they go back to their grade level and talk about how they can, share what we're talking about on a grander scale. So it's this whole idea of traveling and working together. I think PD comes from within too. It doesn't have to be, we're working on things with experts and one another and having times to, to really figure out, like, where are our strengths, where are our differences, looking at the progressions of learning, K-12, that is really good work. And so, this idea of scalability and, continuous and thoughtful and sustained is really, really a challenge for a lot of, schools and, I would probably argue at the university level as well.
Yeah, so a lot of themes are coming out: scalability, flexibility, adaptability, democratization, really interesting topics. I wish we could talk about each of those in detail, but I need to move forward, unfortunately. So I want us to pause for a moment and think from our teacher's perspective for a minute. And let's continue with Amber. As a result of the ongoing university school PD collaborative that you talked about, has your building found specific facets of student learning that appear to be enhanced by the digital technologies? Or on the flip side, what challenges has your staff encountered or is currently facing with the implementation of technology, and how are these issues being addressed?
Well, I think the latter part of the question, we kind of addressed this idea of scalability, but in terms of facets of student learning that are enhanced, we talked about not being about the tool, but I would argue, as I really think about the work I've done with MSU, and I think my colleagues would agree, there's three kind of things that I think are practicum or experiences or exploration or sandbox time with MSU has proven to be fruitful. And we've really looked at this idea of making thinking visible. Now, technology has afforded us to use screencasting tools like Jing, ScreenChamp, Educations, Explain Everything, to really, it doesn't matter what discipline. And so once again, I'm going to say the things I'm going to share in a disciplinary. I would say that one of the things MSU has allowed us to see and where we really have grown a lot from is this idea of screencasting and making thinking visible. And the other, I would say, would be online research. I can reference Michelle Hagerman's, framework, the PST2, IC3. I mean, we've done these kids are getting online, and it doesn't matter what content area again or where subject is. You need to know how to evaluate, how to look across multiple, integrate multiple sources. Looking at, is this a reliable source? Is it trustworthy? Those kind of things. But also just searching. So I think our work with MSU, Sway at her last presentation did a great job on online reading. So I would say, this idea of making thinking visible, online researching, but I'd also argue this niche of collaborative writing is something that is so powerful. And I think if all of us on this panel or working here or listening, very seldomly do we write on our own. It's this collaborative, immersive experience where we're working via Google Docs or these new tools where we can see instantaneously what one another is doing or bookmarking. And so I think preparing and arming our students, no matter what content area, it's this idea of interdisciplinary approaches that's key. And when you think about those three things, making thinking visible, online researching, and collaborative writing, all those things kind of converge with multimodal composition. And so I think, those are critical things that we're continuing to explore and be pushed at as we, grow and work with MSU.
Mm-hmm. But I want to ask the same question to Ashley because I think based on Ashley's experience, Ashley, how have your adult learners responded to the integration of technology?
Really well, but again, one thing that I've learned is you have to go slow to go fast. And you've got currently, like for example, in our high school building, we have 18 total teachers. And while that seems pretty small, they can also give you a pretty good magnifying glass of who's ready to go farther, who's ready to learn, and then who might need some support, and it kind of, one, integrating that technology and also seeing the vision of what that technology can do for their classrooms. Because again, I would argue that all of us in this hangout right now and anyone in education is experiencing this transition. Like back to what Amber said, is that we're experiencing this like collaboration. Well, I would argue that even up until 10 years ago, a teacher was not taught, but used to closing their door and teaching how that's it. You don't see anybody except students. You don't talk to anybody. And now we're teaching these new students about it's okay to share. It's okay to create. It's okay to take your ideas and make it public so the world can see. I often go back to that TED Talk about the little girl who started taking pictures of her lunch in England. And then now her blog is blowing up, and chefs from around the world are looking at her blog and judging school food. And so, what can it do to what can you get from sharing? And so I just think that going in with integrating technology slowly, but also creating some modules to help them. Like for instance, we decided to we knew that we wanted to go one-to-one with Chromebooks eventually. So we took that approach of piloting a few Chromebooks for about 6 months and then slowly giving one teacher one Chromebook. And then we developed modules on how to kind of integrate those Chromebooks, not only Chromebooks, but Google Drive and Google Apps, and to make them more comfortable and having them try it out with one student or just themselves and getting them comfortable with the device. And then now purchasing Chromebook cards and eventually having almost 100% of the students access Chromebooks. So we really take that approach and making sure if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. That means a lot of planning, detailing, and understanding why it's beneficial.
Yeah. Thank you, because this makes me think of what Melissa said earlier about the role of organization, because I see a lot of these technological changes happening over a bigger scale. So, Melissa, coming back to what you said earlier, given the tremendous amount of experience you have, how can universities and school systems, or whatever organization we work for, best support people like you and Amber and Ashley to utilize technology to maximize the quality of professional development experiences you provide to teachers?
Great question. I can't wait to hear other people's answers to this. I would say, again, to repeat what I said before, infrastructure. So what are some tools, and I would guess technological tools, that can help us scale and package or design our training, but also feedback systems and assessment systems. So, I'll use an example of something that really works. One of the great examples of MSU doing this is it supports all faculty in using a tool called Eli Review. It is a tool that allows writing to be evaluated by peers across all disciplines. This is again a framework all faculty can use, and the license has been bought for everyone. And talk about a wonderful impact across all disciplines. It's not just a tool for the physics faculty or the chemistry faculty. Another thing, I actually think we need, honestly, better synchronous online learning systems that are really full of a bunch of different capacities that have parallels to the in-class experience. Again, in terms of getting feedback from students, being able to break out into small groups. I mean, there's a whole lot of qualities of a bunch of synchronous systems out there that aren't always in one package. So I think there's some leadership that universities can take in saying, hey, to the people out there who are developing these products, what are some synchronous systems that we could use? Because that could really reduce the distance barrier a bit. Mm-hmm. Another thing, boy, I would love the universities to support providing some infrastructure for collecting artifacts mm-hmm. of both learning and teaching. Mm-hmm. To me, artifacts of learning and teaching, this relates to, I think, what Amber and Ashley were talking about in terms of making teaching and learning visible. And again, to me, the innovations in teaching and learning are there. We need to elevate those so all of us can see them and try to adopt them ourselves. So those are some infrastructure suggestions. Leadership and policy makes a difference. Reward systems. So again, faculty and TAs at the university level are crushed for time. And how can we change, for example, our reappointment, promotion, and tenure systems to one that, number one, more explicitly reward teaching, but in particular, in having people, rewarding people for attending professional development, not only attending, but demonstrating the impact that those programs have on their classroom experience and ultimately student learning. And to me, as long as you don't touch reward systems, there's going to be challenges there. I think also, again, as a whole, universities can do a really good job at the central level, sort of democratizing support at the department level. There's some wealthy units in terms of resources and not so wealthy units. So the central administration can do a really nice job in supporting, making sure departments have equal access to resources and not making it dependent upon one's discipline. And then finally, I think one of the great ways that universities could help me do my job is provide me with some more resources, monetary support to give to faculty and graduate students to engage in some train-the-trainer activities so they can go into their departments, into their course context, their department context, their disciplinary context, to train their peers in teaching innovation. Excuse me here, my guest just walked by, Maisie, my cat. But again, if I could have some monetary support that I could put out there into departments, give it to teachers, give it to TAs to really implement some dissemination of best practices, that would be terrific. And there's a few models at MSU right now. The Inside Teaching Fellows Program is one at a small scale of how we're doing that. But I think that's a really exciting investment for both the impact in terms of training people, but also providing leadership to teachers who want to train others.
Thank you so much for the funds of knowledge, Melissa. I want to direct a similar question to Ashley. Ashley, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think the organization needs to do at your end?
I think because, actually, right, on with Melissa, that I fully agree with the train the trainer. A lot of schools that I work with obviously are very small, so it would be great instead of having me to get spread too thin or beyond capacity is to work on some ed tech initiatives and instructional technology initiatives and almost kind of create a core group of professional development training. They then can take them back to their schools and communicate both with their administrators and fellow teachers. We implement up here, at least, and I'm not sure, Amber, if you guys do, but we do early release days. Every Friday, we let the students out about 100 minutes early, and we do continuous professional development, I think 32 out of 36 weeks, or 36 out of 40 weeks. And we kind of get into committees and professional learning communities and try and support our learning that we're doing. And so I think it would be really great, because I cannot be at every school on every Friday, to provide some instructional training to their instructional coaches to bring back. And I think that we could further pass along ideas like the SAMR model or the TPAC model, or what if we're all going to go one-to-one on a certain device, how's that going to work out? And so I think that would be beneficial.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing your thoughts on that. Amber, if I could ask you, do you think the MSU rules for collaboration that you've been talking about, does that suffice as a support system in your case?
Well, I'm going to speak on behalf of my colleagues. I explain it like this. They're like Surrey for education, except the real people. I think this idea of what needs to, I think the seed I would like to plant with people listening is the partnerships that are in, you know, you don't have to be in the backyard of a university or community college to tap into this beautiful, like, symbiotic experience where I mean, we've presented with people from MSU, we've wrote articles together, you know, it's this totally immersive, intellectually nourishing experience where I guess my answer is, you know, there's never no panacea. There's not just, it's not one thing. It's closest to nirvana I found. It's if I have a question, I feel very comfortable emailing Spencer, yourself, you know, obviously Paul, Doug, Michelle, Shannon, Sway, all these people. I mean, when you have somebody that you can count on and talk to, and you actually, it's about the people. It's this human connection and understanding, and people taking time and knowing where you're coming from, and to build this relationship over years. I would have to argue, despite the dismal research you see coming out on professional development, because there's a lot that's coming out and showing how, you know, there's a lot of problems. I know I've not done the formal scholarly research, but I would argue that this partnership I have seen firsthand, and I'm sure I could get a lot of my colleagues to attest, we've come so far with our digital understanding and how to best support the kids we're working with in ways that are exploratory and open. So I guess my answer is I feel it's definitely a tent pole for our particular building, and I would even argue our district community, parents, and students. It's been that powerful, where I guess my message would be to people listening, or if you're at the university, seek out these partnerships. It's very two-way. It's not just what we need, it's also how can we foreground and explore some of the dissertation work that you're doing, and in return, let us tap into expertise where you're spending time and researching, and let us put it to action in the trenches, and, you know, and have these conversations. So to me, it's been very important, and I've grown tremendously as a result, and continue to do so as a result of this partnership.
Well, thank you so much. This is perfect timing because I am now at my last question. This has been great, and these were all the questions that we had for you today, but before we leave, as a ritual, we ask one final question to our guests, which is, what do you love about your work? So let us go around and quickly share in a sentence or two, what do you love about your work? Let's start with Ashley.
I love the fact that I get to share knowledge, introduce new ways of thinking and learning, and then finally establishing relationships with so many people who just share the love of educating. And that's, you know, my grandpa used to say is that when you call it work instead of school, it becomes work. And so every day I just go to school, and it's really fun.
Thank you. Amber, what do you love about your work?
Hands down, students, staff, and the colleagues. But I want to, there's a quote, one of my favorite quotes of all time, from a mentor, Troy Hicks, and it just says it beautiful. I think it captures what we're talking about. It says, by focusing on relationships and not just the latest apps or website, we can encourage one-to-one learning that connects students to one another, not just devices. And I think that says a lot.
Thank you, Amber. And finally, Melissa, what do you love about your work?
I just love the fact that I get to work with really, really smart, interesting, fun students and colleagues that are all passionate about professional development. And I also love being able to facilitate the opening of networks and doors for other people. Again, I love it when I can make connections between two people. I already know some folks that I actually might want to connect Ashley or Amber to tonight. I love that. And so just being able to, you know, be exposed to some great things that are happening out there and to connect people to each other is a big satisfying piece.
Well, thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to our guests for joining us at this hour to share their expertise with us. That is all we have for today, and you can watch the recording on bridge.educ.msu.edu. Good night, and keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone. Nice meeting you all.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Spencer could take us off air.
I can take you off here?
Yep.
Okay.